Hello and welcome to Unacademy, a one-stop destination for the English medium civil services aspirants. Before we start the session, can you please let me know if the audio video is clear? Please let me know in the comments if I'm clearly audible and visible. Now, before we start today's Hindu analysis, let me wish everyone a very happy Ganesh Chaturthi. So please let me know if the audio video is fine. Great. Everything looks good. So, wish everyone a very happy Ganesh Chaturthi. And on this auspicious occasion, I would like to inform you that we will be making a fresh attempt through our Hindu analysis to help you prepare for the upcoming prelims examination. Now that the mains exam is almost over for 2025, students will also be shifting their focus to prepare for 2026 prelims. So, in our Hindu analysis going forward, we will ensure that we will pay more attention to prelims topics to cover the topics that are more relevant for prelims with practice questions, along with the detailed analysis that is required for the mains exam. So, without compromising the quality of the discussion and without ensuring that we don't leave out the editorials and columns, we will always provide that priority along with bringing this focus on prelims oriented topics with practice questions starting from today. So let me know what you think about this in the comment section. And before we start, I have a very important announcement. If you're looking to enroll for Unacademy's online classroom program, this is the right time because the subscription of Unacademy is available at just 19,999 with up to 12 months of free extension. To avail this offer, you have to enter the code IAS English. And this offer ends today. Today is the last day of the offer. And if you enroll today, you will get a chance to enroll for the free mains residential program as well. If you take a 2-year subscription and if you clear prelims, Unacademy will be taking care of your mains preparation through a residential program, which includes lodging facilities along with special offline sessions for mains preparation with focus on answer writing practice. So those interested, click on the link provided in the description below and enter the code IAS English to avail this special discounted offer. And if you want the PDF of this session, which will contain detailed points, the annotations, and as well as the prelims practice questions that we are starting from today. If you want the PDF, join the official Telegram channel by scanning the QR code. We will be sharing the PDF over here. I'll also include the answers to the practice questions that I'll be including in the PDF. So let's get started and let's begin with the prelims section from today onwards, where we pay more focus and attention for the prelims related topics first, and then we will cover the detailed analysis of editorials and columns. So let's start with article number 1. On the front page, there's an article that refers to the Vibrant Villages program, which happens to be a very important border development initiative. This program is in the news because Union Home Minister Amit Shah has spoken about the risk posed to India's national security, especially in the border areas and border villages, as a result of demographic changes that allegedly takes place in the border regions. So this is a reference to illegal migration from our neighboring countries, which threatens to cause demographic changes in the border villages, which could be seen as a security threat. So Home Minister Amit Shah has urged the chief secretaries of all the border states and as well as the chiefs of all the border guarding forces such as BSF and SSB and Assam Rifles to ensure that sufficient security measures are taken up to prevent demographic changes from occurring in the border areas, in the border villages. He has also urged the state governments and the border guarding forces to ensure that any illegal structures, especially religious structures which come up in border areas, are cleared to ensure the border security of the sensitive border regions of India. These statements were made by the Home Minister while addressing a workshop on the Vibrant Villages program. So that's why the topic becomes relevant for your prelims examination. So let's quickly understand what is the Vibrant Villages program. This is a centrally sponsored scheme that was launched in 2022-23 to ensure that border villages are better developed, to provide for better development in the border villages, to provide for better infrastructure, to improve the livelihood opportunities for the residents of these border villages. This special program was launched by the Ministry of Home Affairs, and phase one of this program is now being implemented until 2025-2026. So, under this initiative, the initial focus was those border villages located along the Chinese border. Without making an explicit reference to China, under the central sector scheme, the focus of phase one was to develop those villages located on the northern borders of India in the states of Arunachal Pradesh, in the Union Territory of Ladakh, and in the states of Himachal Pradesh, Uttarakhand, and Sikkim. So it was an indirect reference that we are developing our border villages that are located along the Chinese border. So this initiative was seen as a counter by India to the model village program of China. China has been very aggressively developing these so-called model villages right at the doorstep of the India-China border. China calls them the Zhongkang villages, the so-called model villages, where China has been providing advanced infrastructure and facilities, and it has been repopulating the border regions as well. And this, in a way, enhances China's claims as well along the disputed border. So to counter China's model village program, India launched the Vibrant Villages program with focus on strategic border villages along the northern borders of India from Ladakh to Arunachal Pradesh. So this was phase one of the scheme. And the idea here is to ensure that the residents of border villages are satisfied, ensure that they remain loyal and patriotic to the nation. Because generally, border villages which are located far away, which are remote, they might suffer from underdevelopment. They may not receive the full benefits of government welfare programs. They might lack adequate infrastructure and employment and economic opportunities. So this could create resentment. This could create resentment amongst the residents of border villages, and it could make them vulnerable to be recruited by hostile forces. Maybe the hostile neighboring countries, their intelligence agencies and armed forces, or even insurgent and terrorist groups who try to cross over illegally. They might try to take the help of these local residents who have resentment against the state. So to prevent this from happening and to enhance and strengthen our own claims, and also to provide for better facilities and infrastructure and livelihood opportunities, this ambitious scheme was rolled out by the government of India. This also helps in preventing the depopulation of border villages. Because when enough infrastructure and livelihood opportunities are not present in the border areas, that's when the residents will move out. They will move out to other big cities and states. And as a result, it will result in depopulation of our border areas, which could undermine our territorial claims as well. And also don't forget, border residents, they act as eyes and ears of our security forces and intelligence agencies. They can monitor any adverse developments or any hostile infiltration and pass on that valuable intelligence to our security forces and agencies. So it's very important to cultivate these border residents, ensure that they play a role in border security and border management, and through this approach, strengthen our own claims in sensitive border areas. That's why developing the border region, managing the border areas is equally important in border security. In fact, the MHA has a separate initiative known as the Border Area Development Program, the BADP. This was started in 1980s, 1990s. Initially, it was focused only along the Pakistan border. But now BADP has been expanded to cover all the border states. And this is a separate independent program of the Home Ministry aimed at border development. This does not overlap with the new Vibrant Villages program. Is that clear? The BADP and the Vibrant Villages program, they do not overlap. They serve their own objectives. The BADP is implemented across all the border states and border villages to provide for better development. And Vibrant Villages program is an addition to it, which was initially focused on the villages present along the Chinese border under phase 1 of this initiative. Now, this program has been expanded recently. Phase 2 has been approved by the Union Cabinet just a few months ago in April 2025. And now the program is no longer focused just on the Chinese border. The focus is not just the villages along the northern border. In fact, the program has now been expanded to cover select strategic villages across all the border states and union territories of India, from Gujarat to Jammu and Kashmir to Ladakh to Arunachal Pradesh to Mizoram. Every border state is covered under Vibrant Villages program, and select strategic villages are chosen where Vibrant Villages program initiative is implemented. So if you are aware of all these basic facts, you should be able to answer any factual question or even an analytical question based on this topic in prelims. So let's take up a practice question, and I want you guys to answer this one. Please mention the correct answer in the comments. Right now, I'll not give you the right answer because I've already given all the explanation that is needed. But I'll include the correct answer in the PDF, which will be shared in the Telegram channel. So let's read the question. With reference to Vibrant Villages program, consider the following statements. 4 statements have been given. The scheme is a central sector scheme aimed at comprehensive development of border villages to improve border security. Phase 1 of the program covers villages in Arunachal Pradesh, Sikkim, Uttarakhand, Himachal Pradesh, and Ladakh. Phase 2, announced in 2025, focuses solely on border villages of Jammu and Kashmir and includes provisions for cross-border trade infrastructure. The program emphasizes creation of essential infrastructure, livelihood opportunities, and digital as well as financial inclusion to check out migration. So let me know what is the correct answer in the comments, and later today I'll be giving you the correct answers in the PDF, which will be uploaded on our Telegram channel. Now let's look at the next topic. On the front page, there's an article referring to the upcoming visit of Prime Minister Modi to Japan. As we have been discussing over the last few days, PM Modi is all set to travel to Japan, and later he will be visiting China as well for the SCO summit. So in Japan, PM Modi will participate in the India-Japan annual summit, and India-Japan relations will be taken forward. So in the run-up to this visit, a press conference was held by the Ministry of External Affairs, and Foreign Secretary Vikram Misri has spoken about the Quad summit, which is going to come up for discussion during PM Modi's visit to Japan. Because last year, India was supposed to host the Quad summit, but later, at the request of United States, India gave up the hosting rights and US hosted the Quad summit last year. Because that was the last year of President Biden's presidency. And because of Biden's commitments, he was not able to travel to India. So at the request of the US, India transferred the hosting rights and US hosted the Quad summit last year. So now in 2025, it is India's turn again to host the Quad summit. But as of now, there is no official confirmation from India whether India will be hosting the Quad summit this year, especially because of the disruption in India-US relations, because of the tariff wars unleashed by Donald Trump. India has hit a pause on the close strategic ties with the United States to some extent. India has been giving a cold shoulder to the US. So there is no certainty whether India will be hosting the Quad summit. So this will come up for discussion during PM Modi's visit to Japan. So let's quickly talk about the Quad grouping. When was it set up? What is its objectives? What are its important initiatives? Based on which you can take up a practice question for prelims. See, the Quad grouping, the origin of this grouping goes back to 2004, when the Indian Ocean tsunami caused massive destruction and devastation across the Indian Ocean region. These 4 democracies which are part of it, they took part in disaster relief efforts. During the 2004 tsunami in the Indian Ocean region, the navies of India, United States, Japan, and Australia, the 4 leading democratic powers of the Indo-Pacific, they worked together and they established a collaboration between their navies for the first time to provide disaster management assistance or HADR support. They conducted search and rescue operations. They provided humanitarian relief and disaster relief to all the affected countries in the Indo-Pacific. So this gave rise to the idea of these four like-minded democracies working together in the Indo-Pacific to stabilize the region. Former Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe proposed this idea, and he referred to this group as the Asian Security Diamond. Because by early 2000, China had emerged as a common threat in the Indo-Pacific for all these democracies. So, driven by these common interests, the idea was floated by Japan's Prime Minister Shinzo Abe of forming an Asian Security Diamond, a sort of an alliance of these four democracies. In fact, India responded positively, and in 2007, India expanded the Malabar naval exercise and invited all these countries along with Singapore to participate in a multilateral naval exercise. Until then, Malabar had remained a bilateral naval exercise with United States. But in 2007, then Prime Minister Manmohan Singh expanded the vision of Malabar exercise and also invited Japan, Australia, and Singapore to take part with India and United States in this important naval exercise. So there was a lot of hope and anticipation that these four democracies would work together and strategically align to counter China. But following the expansion of Malabar exercise, China got angry. China retaliated against India, started putting pressure on India as India was getting closer to the US and Japan and Australia. And as a result, India downgraded its engagement as well. And the idea of these four democracies working together was lost for some time. But in 2017, following repeated provocations from China, especially in South China Sea and in East China Sea, where China has picked multiple maritime territorial disputes with Southeast Asian and East Asian countries, the idea of this group was revived, and now it was being referred to as the Quad grouping or the Quadrilateral Security Dialogue. In 2017, the Quadrilateral Security Dialogue was revived as an informal strategic grouping. It has no treaty, it has no secretariat, it's not a treaty-based organization. It is an informal strategic grouping that was revived in 2017, and now it was officially referred to as the Quad grouping or the Quadrilateral Security Dialogue. And the relation between these four countries has now been elevated to the summit level since 2021. Since 2021, the four leaders of these countries are regularly meeting at the summit level, further promoting the strategic ties between them. Initially, China reacted very aggressively against the Quad and even started calling the Quad as the Asian NATO, as China saw this as a military alliance of these countries to contain China. But India rejected these allegations. India made it very clear that Quad has no military purpose. India ensured that Quad doesn't become a military alliance or an Asian NATO. And at India's insistence, the Quad group has now been diversified and it focuses on multiple priorities and objectives. The primary goal of the Quad group is to enforce the rules-based order to ensure that Indo-Pacific Ocean remains free and open. The Quad group wants to ensure that international rules are followed, such as the UN Convention on Law of the Sea, which is an indirect message to China to respect international rules, to uphold freedom of navigation, freedom of overflight, as China is known to disrupt the movement of vessels and aircraft in South China Sea and East China Sea. So this is the primary objective. It's not a military grouping or a military alliance to contain China. It's an informal diplomatic group, a strategic group to ensure international rules are enforced and obeyed by everyone. Apart from that, the Quad is focusing on various initiatives, including economic initiatives and technological collaboration. For example, there is a vaccine initiative that was launched in 2021, where India will produce vaccines with funding from US and Japan and logistical support from Australia. Under the Quad, there is focus on critical emerging technologies as well, such as artificial intelligence, semiconductors, etc. So the Quad has truly become a diversified group today, and it plays a very important role in the Indo-Pacific. But there is a shadow on the organization today because of the policies of Donald Trump and how India, Japan, Australia might react to it. So that is why the group is very important. It is in the news. So take up this practice question for prelims. With reference to the Quad, consider the following. The Quad Vaccine Partnership, launched in 2021, aims to deliver COVID-19 vaccines manufactured in India with financial support from US and Japan and logistical support from Australia. Second statement says Quad is a treaty-based alliance with a permanent secretariat in Singapore to coordinate Indo-Pacific security initiatives. So think carefully and answer this question and mention your answers in the comment section below. Now let's look at article number 3. On page 4, there's an article referring to upcoming elections to the Bodoland Territorial Council. This is a very important topic under polity and as well as under internal security. The Bodoland Territorial Council is coming up with the next round of elections, which will be held by the State Election Commission of Assam. So the State Election Commission of Assam will be holding fresh elections to the Bodoland Territorial Council, and the composition of this council, the autonomy it enjoys and the history behind it is very, very important, both for prelims and mains. The Bodoland Territorial Council enjoys constitutional autonomy. It has been set up under the provisions of the 6th schedule of the Indian Constitution under Article 244. It has been given constitutional protection, and legislative, executive, financial, and judicial powers are delegated to this autonomous council. This autonomous council consists of 40 elected members. That is the composition of the territorial council. In order to protect the interests and the rights of the Bodo community, this territorial council was constituted with constitutional protection under 6th schedule provisions, and 40 members are elected and chosen through local elections which are held. And the governance and administration of the autonomous area is handled by this authority, the Bodoland Territorial Council. Out of these 40 members, the 40 seats which are available, 30 seats are reserved for those with scheduled tribe status. So this is basically for the Bodo community. I'll explain the Bodo issue as well slightly. For the Bodo community members, 30 seats are reserved as they have been given the tag of scheduled tribes in Bodo regions. Then 5 seats are reserved for non-scheduled tribes in the Bodo areas, and the remaining 5 seats are kept as open category seats where any contestant can participate in the elections. So this is the composition of the Bodoland Territorial Council. But what is the history of the Bodoland Territorial Council? Now, please look at the map that I've shared over here. This can also be very important. You can even expect a geography-based, map-based question on this topic. The Bodos are a distinct ethno-linguistic community found in northwestern part of Assam towards the northern parts of the Brahmaputra River Valley. You can see the Brahmaputra River over here that drains into Bangladesh eventually. So towards the northwestern part of Assam, there are 4 districts over here: Kokrajhar, Chirang, Baksa, and Udalgiri. This is where you find the native Bodo community, which speaks a distinct language, the Bodo language. They have a distinct cultural identity, a distinct ethnic and linguistic identity. From many decades, the Bodos have often complained that they have been dominated by the Assamese and they have been neglected by the government of Assam. So this sense of neglect, the sense of perceived injustice, created resentment amongst the Bodos. And in 1980s, this triggered Bodo insurgency. And it turned into a violent extremist movement, where Bodo insurgents would often target Assamese. They would target outsiders, especially illegal migrants from Bangladesh. And sometimes they would even target Indians as well. And later they would blame them to be illegal migrants from Bangladesh. So Bodo insurgency has been a notorious threat in Assam and in Northeast India. And in 1993, the first Bodo peace accord was worked out by the government of India in order to settle the Bodo conflict. Indian security forces managed to weaken some of the Bodo insurgent groups. We negotiated with them and we worked out the first Bodo accord in 1993. And the government of India, through the peace accord, had granted limited autonomy. Limited autonomy was granted to the Bodo region to satisfy the demands of the Bodo people to bring the insurgency to an end. But however, the limited autonomy did not satisfy the demands, and the insurgency continued, especially by a notorious group called as NDFB, the National Democratic Front of Bodoland. Then in 2003, when multiple Bodo groups existed and operated here, the second Bodo Accord was signed and worked out with the government of India, when this limited autonomy was turned into constitutional autonomy. That's when the Bodoland Territorial Council was established in 2003 with constitutional status given under the 6th schedule, with constitutional protection given under the 6th schedule provisions. So since then, Bodoland Territorial Council has been administering these Bodo districts with its own legislative, executive, administrative, financial, and judicial autonomy to some extent. And it allows for the protection of the tribal land, protection of the resources, the identity, and the culture of such tribal communities. But this peace process as well did not bring Bodo insurgency to a complete end. Though some of the minor Bodo groups surrendered, the NDFB did not surrender, and it continued to wage its war against India by finding shelter in Bangladesh. NDFB found a safe haven in Bangladesh, and it continued its insurgency for many more years. Finally, in 2020, after NDFB had been weakened, the third Bodo Peace Accord was worked out by the Modi government, and through the third Bodo Peace Accord, new changes have been introduced to the Bodoland Territorial Council. See, previously, the Bodoland Territorial Council, which was set up in 2003 under the second Bodo Accord, it was administering a region known as BTAD, Bodoland Territorial Autonomous Division or Autonomous Districts. This was the name of this autonomous territory, which was governed and administered by the BTC. But now, through the third Bodo Accord, the map of this area, the territorial extent of the autonomous territory has been redrawn. It has been reshaped. And now this autonomous region is known as BTR, Bodoland Territorial Region, which is governed and administered by the BTC, the Bodoland Territorial Council. So the governing authority, the Autonomous Council, remains the same, but its composition has slightly changed, and the territorial extent of this autonomous area has changed. So previously, this territory, which was called as BTAD, as per the second Bodo Accord, has now been renamed and remapped, and it is known as BTR, as per the third Bodo Accord of 2020. Now, this topic came as a mains question as well in mains 2025, where UPSC asked students to talk about the peace agreements in Northeast India that have been signed in recent years. So such topics can be very, very relevant. So now fresh elections are being held to this Autonomous Council, and through the third Bodo Accord, several new provisions were provided. Through the third Bodo Accord, NDFB surrendered and brought its militancy to an end. And today, Bodo insurgency has come to a complete stop. NDFB militants have surrendered. They've been brought into mainstream. The government of India has provided special funds and a development package to develop the area with new projects which have been planned. So this Autonomous Council plays a critical role in developing this region, which has been affected by insurgency and underdevelopment. That is why the composition of BTC, the role and its functions and its history can be very important for our exams. So take up this question. With reference to BTC, consider the following statements. It was created under the 6th schedule of the Constitution of India. It was established through the third Bodo Accord of 2020. Which of the statements is or are correct? Let me know the right answer in the comments. Next, coming to an article on page number 9. The article refers to One Nation, One Subscription. See, the Ministry of Education launched a very ambitious program. It was approved by the Union Cabinet in 2024, and it is being implemented with the Ministry of Education to ensure that all research papers and publications are made easily accessible at a reasonable cost to research institutions across the country. This is a very ambitious program of the Government of India. It has set aside almost 6,000 crore rupees for this program so that scientific institutions in the public domain and later in the private domain as well will be able to have affordable access to all scientific journals, scientific research papers, and publications. Because, see, this is an area of concern when it comes to scientific research and development. The field of scientific publishing is a very expensive domain, especially the publications which bring out scientific papers and journals. They charge an exorbitant amount for a subscription, which is not affordable for researchers and even for large public institutions. Sometimes they end up charging lakhs of rupees for an annual subscription to get hold of the research material which is published by the publications. So what many researchers and organizations do is that instead of paying the high subscription fee, they end up relying on piracy. For example, we have seen some popular open source and free scientific platforms such as Sci-Hub and Sci-Net, which democratized access to such scientific journals and publications. But however, this creates concern about copyright infringement. Since it is a case of piracy, where scientific papers are being published for free, and this has economic consequences as well for the investors and the researchers and the organizations. So around the world, most countries have been banning platforms like Sci-Hub and Sci-Net. In US and Europe, the courts have essentially placed a ban on these portals as they constitute a copyright infringement. Recently in India, the Delhi High Court has also issued a similar ban. The Delhi High Court has ordered all the internet service providers to block the access to these platforms such as Sci-Hub and Sci-Net, which basically engage in copyright infringement in the name of giving scientific papers for free. Though it democratizes access, the problem is that it results in copyright infringement. So the solution offered by the government is one nation, one subscription. To have one subscription plan where the government will invest the money to get hold of subscription of these expensive scientific papers and publications and give access to them at affordable prices to research institutions, first in the public sector and then open it up to private sector and private researchers as well. So this is why one nation, one subscription scheme is a very important initiative in the field of science and technology. But however, there is criticism against it as well, because the government is investing so much to essentially subscribe to scientific journals and publications. But the global trend is shifting towards free access, especially for public funded projects. If you look at US and Europe, there are regulations which mandate publications to provide these papers for free without charging a single dollar or a rupee, because the research projects would be funded with taxpayers' money. So for public funded projects, you already have legal mandates in US and Europe that publications have to publish them for free and give free access. But that's not the case in India. So this is the criticism as well, that government is incurring the cost, setting aside 6,000 crores just for this, which is seen as a wasteful expenditure. So experts believe that government should mandate publications to provide free access to everyone for publicly funded scientific projects. Now, take up this practice question. With reference to One Nation, One Subscription initiative, consider the following. It's an initiative of Ministry of Science and Technology to provide countrywide access to academic journals and research papers. The primary aim is to make scientific knowledge accessible to students, researchers, and institutions by negotiating a single national level subscription with publishers. Let me know what's the right answer in the comments. Next, on page 12, we have another important government initiative, Adi Karmayogi Initiative. Please make a note. This is a very, very important initiative which can definitely come as a prelims question. This is an initiative of the Ministry of Tribal Affairs, and it is mainly focused on training and capacity building. It is focused on training and capacity building to train government officials and tribal community members. The training is focused on government officials who are working in tribal areas towards tribal welfare, who are implementing various tribal welfare schemes and programs. It will also include the youth and community leaders at the local level. The purpose is to ensure that they have the right awareness about government welfare schemes meant for tribal welfare. The purpose is to drive that motivation as well. Because the opinion of experts is that when it comes to tribal welfare and development, we have sufficient schemes and programs. The government has enough initiatives. But problem is the enforcement, the implementation is lacking. And many studies have shown that it's the lack of motivation, lack of awareness at the grassroots level, the lack of community participation, which is affecting the efficiency of these programs. So, to drive a behavioral change and to motivate the local authorities and the local community members to be more involved in the implementation of these welfare programs, the government is launching this initiative, Adi Karmayogi Initiative. So, the training will include driving motivation amongst these grassroots workers. For example, they will be made to practice a candle lighting initiative as a symbolic initiative. That is, when you light a candle, it's a symbolic gesture that you are driving away the darkness with light. So, this is done as a community program involving all the local officials and the community members. Then, fishbowl exercise, where groups are brought together, which consists of local officials and tribal members, and they will discuss the issues that are present in their particular jurisdiction. It's as if several fish are placed in a bowl and they're asked to discuss amongst themselves. So it's essentially a group discussion which will be promoted at the grassroots level to bring the officials closer to the local community and ensure that everybody, all the stakeholders, will express their views and opinions and their concerns. This will also include a village scenario role play exercise where the local tribal villagers are asked to take up role playing. For example, a tribal member is asked to imagine that they are a farmer, or essentially they are a fish cultivator, or local officials are asked to play a different role and try and envision the challenges and problems faced by them, so that there is better appreciation of the problems faced by different sections of the tribal society. So such exercises, capacity building, training programs will be implemented to drive awareness, to drive motivation. And that is the focus of Adi Karmayogi Initiative. So please make a note of this. Now coming to the practice question. With reference to Adi Karmayogi Initiative, consider the following. It is a capacity building initiative for government officials and community members in tribal areas launched by Tribal Affairs Ministry. The initiative is implemented through an online learning platform to provide IT and engineering training modules. So let me know what is the correct answer in the comments below, and I'll include the answers in the PDF as well. Now coming to the last prelims topic, on page 12, we have another government initiative in the news. It is related to environment and ecology as well. The Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change has finalized the establishment of a national designated authority. The Environment Ministry, which also deals with climate change, has finalized the composition and the structure and the role and functions of NDA, National Designated Authority. Establishing such a NDA is a mandatory legal obligation under the provisions of Paris Agreement. Under the Paris Agreement of the Climate Change Convention, we have Article 6, which mandates all the countries to set up a NDA to oversee the carbon trading scheme. How carbon credits will be credited, how it will be tracked, how it will be monitored, how the trading market mechanism will be implemented. So to look after carbon trading and carbon markets, under Paris Agreement, there is a legal obligation on all the members under Article 6 to establish a national designated authority. This was codified at COP29, which was held in Baku, Azerbaijan. It was mandated at COP29, which was hosted by Azerbaijan, and all the countries have this obligation. So Environment Ministry has constituted a NDA, which is a 21-member committee. It will be headed by the Secretary to the Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change. So the Secretary to the Ministry will be the chairperson of the NDA. And there will be officials from concerned ministries like Ministry of External Affairs, Ministry of Steel, Petroleum, Fertilizers, So senior officials from concerned ministries will also be part of this committee along with experts. So it's a 21 member committee headed by the Secretary to Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change. So the role of this authority is to ensure that they oversee the implementation of the carbon market in the country, where carbon credits are assigned for clean projects, renewable energy projects, for cutting down on emissions, which can be traded in the market. And this can create a system of incentives and disincentives to bring down emissions and to switch towards cleaner, renewable forms of fuel and energy. So, looking after carbon trading and carbon markets and placing regulations in this regard would be the primary purpose of the NDA. Now, take up a practice question based on this. With reference to NDA under Paris Agreement, consider the following. The creation of an NDA is a mandatory requirement under Article 6 of Paris Agreement. India has established NDA as a 21-member committee headed by the Secretary of the Environment Ministry. So try and answer this question. India has finalized and notified its establishment. Now let me know what is the correct answer for this question in the comments. So this completes my quick analysis and discussion of all the prelims topics with practice questions. Now let's move towards the detailed analysis where we will take up a couple of articles that are relevant for both prelims and mains and try to carry out a critical discussion and analysis on these topics to help you prepare for mains answer writing. On the front page itself, we have an update on the tariffs that US is imposing on India. The 50% tariffs that Donald Trump has announced against Indian exports. This is again in the news because these tariffs will kick into effect from today. The 50% tariffs which were announced at the start of the month, they are going to take effect starting from today. It has been notified by the Department of Homeland Security of the United States. So meaning starting from today, Indian exports into US will incur 50% tariffs. 25% is tariffs that US is imposing on India, allegedly because of India's unfair tariff policies. And remaining 25% is a penalty that US has levied on India as India continues to import Russian oil, as India happens to be one of the largest buyers of Russian oil, despite the Western sanctions on Russia. Now, most likely, the additional penalty tariffs on India is a bargaining tactic. It's an arm twisting tactic of the Trump administration. They are trying to pressurize India to cut off oil imports from Russia, to bring pressure on Russia to end the Ukraine war. Because Trump has prioritized working out a peace deal to end the Ukraine conflict, and Russia is not budging despite all the efforts. So US is trying to use India for this reason, bringing pressure on India through these 25% penalty tariffs, forcing India to cut off the oil trade from Russia so that it could financially squeeze Russia and push Russia to agree for a peace process to end the Ukraine war. That is probably what the US is expecting. But India has been very firm, very clear that India is not going to budge. India will continue its independent strategic partnership with Russia. We will continue to pursue our independent foreign policy. India will do whatever it takes to protect our national interests, and India will not fall under American pressure. At the same time, India has not reacted in a knee-jerk manner. We have not announced any retaliatory tariffs as of now. India is holding back because we don't want to further hurt the trade relationship between the two countries. Because tariffs levied by India as a retaliation would punish Indian consumers. There are a lot of key imports that come from the US to India. And if you place high tariffs on them, a matching 25% or 50% tariff, it will hurt Indian importers and they will pass down the cost to the Indian consumers. So to avoid that, India has not resorted to retaliatory tariffs as of now. But India has been standing firm that we will not budge under American pressure. Let them impose these additional tariffs, and India will be looking at short-term, medium-term, and long-term implications and measures to counter the effect. But one thing is very certain, Indian exports will take a hit. At least $45 billion worth of Indian exports will see a significant impact. The exports might come down by 30 to 50% into the US market. And the US is a critical market for Indian exports. So that is the concern being flagged over here. Because see, sectors such as gems and jewelry, textiles and garments, even leather, footwear, furniture, and engineering goods, auto components, etc. All these sectors are labor intensive, meaning they employ millions and millions of people. So these jobs in India are dependent on exports into the US market. So of course the tariffs will have a direct impact because there are other competitors for India who will be able to now enjoy the lower tariffs that they have. Countries like Vietnam, countries like Philippines, countries like Bangladesh, even China for that matter, they all have much lower tariffs compared to India. Countries like Vietnam, Philippines, Bangladesh, who are competitors for us in sectors like garments, textiles, footwear, leather, etc., they have a tariff rate of in the range of 15 to 20%, meaning there is a price differential of 30 to 35% between an Indian product exported to US and let's say a Bangladeshi or a Vietnamese product which will be exported to the US. So obviously, the US traders and consumers will prefer the cheaper product. Now imagine there is a pair of shoes produced in India, similar quality shoes produced in Bangladesh, similar quality shoes produced in Vietnam. Let's assume the production cost is pretty much the same in all three countries. Let's say it's 100 rupees per pair of shoes. Now, because of 50% tariffs, the Indian shoe, when exported to the US, will become substantially costlier, touching 150 rupees. Whereas the same pair of shoes from Bangladesh or Vietnam, which is priced similarly, because of the lower tariffs in the range of 15 to 20%, can be sold in the US market at 115, 120, 125 rupees. So these products will still be cheaper because of the tariff differential, and Indian exports will definitely take a hit. There is no doubt about it. Unless and until the tariffs are renegotiated and a trade deal is worked out, we will see a significant impact on Indian exports. On at least $45 billion worth of exports, there will be an impact. We might see a significant drop. We have already seen cancellation of orders by American importers and traders. They've already suspended most of the orders they had placed, and the labor intensive sectors in India are already alarmed. They are worried. So this leads me to the next article. There is a very interesting column today related to this topic. It mainly focuses on a very important social issue. It focuses on the role of women in the labor force to make our country more self-reliant. See, the only way to stand up to the bullying of the US and to counter the pressure tactics of the US is to make the Indian economy more self-reliant and Atmanirbhar. That's the only way India can get out of it. But you can't do this without focusing on the role of women in labor force. Because American tariffs will primarily affect labor intensive sectors like leather, gems and jewelry, garments and textiles, where millions of Indian women are employed. Now you take just garment and textile sector, we have at least 50 million Indian women employed in this key sector. So can you understand the direct impact it is going to have? If exports of Indian textiles and garments will drop by more than 50% because of the American tariffs, millions of Indian women could lose their jobs. So one way to address these challenges, these external challenges, is to strengthen our economy, become self-reliant, and you cannot do this without ensuring women's participation in the labor force. That is the argument the writer is making. The writer is discussing the gender angle to India's economic vulnerabilities. The writer presents a very beautiful case study, which I would like to present as well. And you can use this in your answers. And I'll be presenting some points beyond the article so that you can substantiate the argument as to why we should bring more women into the workforce to help India grow and become more self-reliant and Atmanirbhar. Now, for example, if you look at countries such as China, if you look at countries such as United States or let's say Netherlands or Japan, all these countries have done phenomenally well when it comes to manufacturing, when it comes to important small industries, mainly because of the role of women in the labor force. See, right now, India enjoys a tremendous advantage. We enjoy the demographic dividend. Correct? The demographic dividend essentially means that you have a very vast working age population, which vastly outnumbers the dependents in our country. Now, this is the sweet spot for any country. It can be a great opportunity if you can provide the right education and skills and training and jobs for the working population. A country will boom in its growth and reach the developed stage of its economic development. But however, this could become a weakness as well if you don't create enough jobs, if you don't provide right education, skills, and training. The demographic dividend can become a burden. And for India, this dividend will last up to 2045, another 2 decades. We are already at the peak. 2025 represents the peak of our demographic dividend, which will last another 2 decades. And after that, you will start seeing a decline, meaning India will see the problem of aging population post 2050. That is for sure. So whatever we have to do to make India a developed nation, it has to be done in the next 20 to 25 years. And this cannot happen without adequate participation of women in the labor force. That is the core point. Now see, American tariffs will bring down India's GDP by 0.6% to 1%. Most estimates, they peg India's GDP drop because of American tariffs. If it continues for a full financial year, our GDP will take a hit by around 0.6% to 1%. So if women's labor force participation is increased, this could help trigger economic activities in other sectors, which can make India self-reliant. Now, currently, if you look at the female labor force participation rate in our country, it has been stagnating in the range of 37 to 41%. This is the female labor force participation rate in India, which is very, very low compared to global standards. You know what is the female labor force participation rate in China? It is upwards of 60%. Now, if you look at countries such as Italy, countries such as Greece, in Southern Europe, in the Mediterranean, they made one big mistake. Because of the prevalent patriarchy in the society, because of the expectation on women to be primary caregivers in the family, in countries like Italy and Greece, where you still have a conservative society, women were not encouraged to work. Even the governments didn't do enough to encourage women to come out and participate in the labor market. So as a result, you know what happened? The economies of these countries have today stagnated. One of the reasons why the economy of Italy, Greece has stagnated is because they did not leverage the demographic dividend when they had the opportunity. Because of prevalent conservative notions and patriarchal mindset, women were relegated to the role of caregivers in the family to look after children and elderly people. They were not actively encouraged to go out and work. Opportunities were not created, facilities were not provided. And today, Italy, Greece are stagnated economies. Now, let me present the other side of the story. If you look at countries like US, China, Japan, one reason why they registered massive growth was because they actively encouraged the role of women in the labor market. In the United States, we saw this during Second World War. During Second World War, US was facing a critical labor shortage in its factories to produce weapons, ammunition, essential goods and material. And they encouraged more women to come out and work. And right policies were created, right schemes were introduced to provide equal pay for women, to provide facilities for women at workplace so they can look after their children, especially infants. So such facilities were provided, encouragement was given, further education training was provided, and US saw a significant jump in its female labor force participation rate during Second World War, which played a direct role in powering the US economy to become a developed economy. The same goes for China. After 1978, that is after China introduced its economic reforms, China focused on increasing female labor force participation rate, and today it has a female labor force participation rate of above 60%, which has helped the country to become a manufacturing powerhouse. Women workers have played a pivotal role in the growth story of China. In Japan, female labor force participation rate was always higher, it was around 63%. With further policies and interventions and initiatives, Japanese government increased female labor force participation rate to 70%. And you know what was the impact on the GDP of the country? Japan's GDP rose by 4% just because of this. Just because female labor force participation increased from 63 to 70%, the GDP jumped by 4%. In fact, though Japan had a stagnant economy because of other reasons, the higher participation of women in the workforce has been a backbone of sorts which has supported the Japanese economy. See, maybe these models are not directly applicable for India. So the writer is suggesting the model of Netherlands. In Netherlands, the part-time work model, which has been specifically fine-tuned for women, is something that can strike a balance between the caregiving role of women and their role in the economy. See, this will require government support. If the government can come out with right policies, see, first of all, caregiving need not be just the task of women, right? This is largely because of the patriarchal tendencies that prevail in the society. Be it looking after children, looking after elderly, this is a burden which should be shared by the entire family, not just by the women of the household. But given the realities in India, this social trend is likely to persist. So one way to encourage household women to come out and work is to promote part-time work opportunities. Take, for example, gig work. Platforms like Urban Company, they've recruited thousands of women professionals, and today they are earning 20 to 25,000 rupees per month while fulfilling their household duties as well. And this makes women financially independent. They need not be dependent on the men of the household. They can break the shackles of patriarchy as well. So gig economy can be a transformative opportunity where women can work for 5 hours, 6 hours while fulfilling the traditional role as well. Of course, eventually we have to emancipate women, break them out of this family mold, right? Because as I said, family responsibilities is something that should be shared by the entire family, not just be borne by the women of the household. But till India gets there, a part-time work model could be hugely beneficial. Few state governments have been doing very well in this regard. In Karnataka, the Karnataka government has introduced the Shakti program. Under the Shakti program, Karnataka government is encouraging women workers, women entrepreneurs, giving them the right support and the pay opportunities and as well as social security, which is driving a significant change to bring more women into the workforce. Because in the traditional economy, most women who are working, they are in the informal sector. In urban areas, women are largely in the informal sector. In the rural areas as well, women are largely contributing to agricultural work, family work, which is not even accounted for. They don't get paid for it, right? They're doing unpaid work. They're not recognized for it and they don't have social security as well. So initiatives like Shakti of Karnataka government is driving a big change on the ground, improving mobility for women, creating opportunities for women workers and entrepreneurs. Even Rajasthan government has a very good initiative, the Indira Gandhi Employment Guarantee Scheme. Under the Indira Gandhi Employment Guarantee Scheme, Rajasthan government is creating opportunities for women in urban areas, in the local neighborhood, where they can take up part-time work as service providers. And this has increased the income capability of women and their contribution to the economy. So the concluding point is that India cannot become a Viksit Bharat by excluding nearly half of its population. The gendered issues have to be addressed. You need to bring more women into the workforce and ensure that the rise of India is built on the shoulders of not just the men of the country, but the women of the country as well. So take up this practice question. I'll give you the answer writing approach as well. The imposition of US tariffs that threatens to impact millions of Indian women in labor intensive sectors is a wake up call. Women need empowerment as economic agents. Elucidate. So how will you write an answer to this question? So your introduction will have to set the context. The context can be the US tariffs, how it will impact labor intensive industries such as garments, textiles, etc. What will be the impact on our GDP? What will be the impact on our foreign policy, on our strategic autonomy? in 3-4 lines, in one paragraph, you can bring out this analysis in the introduction. Meaning, such external pressure tactics will lead to weakness in the Indian economy. It will compromise India's sovereignty as well. So you're setting the context, you're identifying the problem statement. The only way in which we can overcome this challenge is to become self reliant. And you cannot become self reliant without increased women participation in the labor force. That is the solution you're offering. One way to diversify our exports, strengthen our domestic production, is to bring more women into the labor force and create opportunities. So then you can go on to illustrate what can be done. You can present the data as well, as I discussed. You can draw a comparative analysis, how Italy, Greece saw a decline, how China, Japan, US have done better. And the main factor here is the role of women in the labor force. So draw out that comparison maybe between countries like Italy, Greece, US, China, Japan. How India can take the middle path maybe by following the model of Netherlands. Mention schemes of government of Karnataka and Rajasthan, which are designed to encourage more women workers, right? How the central government can also come out with such initiatives. In fact, there are programs with the Ministry of Labor and Employment in this regard to drive greater women labor force participation, and conclude by pointing out that a Viksit Bharat cannot be built by excluding the women of the nation. It has to be built on the shoulders of both men and women of the country. So we need to significantly step up women's participation in the labor market. So that has to be your conclusion, right? So use this structure and try to write an answer and post your answers as well in the comments. I'll take a look at it later and it will help other students as well. Now, coming to another important column, the government of India has decided to withdraw the import duty on cotton imports. For the time being, a suspension has been placed, a temporary suspension. The import duties that had been levied on cotton imports has been withdrawn. Now let's break this down. Let's understand why has it been done? What is its implication? What is its significance? See, India is one of the world's largest cotton producer, by the way. And cotton is a feedstock. It's a raw material for the textile industry. Correct? Cotton is a key raw material for the textile industry, and India is a global leader in textile production and textile exports. Now, there is an alarming concern that over the last few years, there is a big mismatch which is happening in demand and supply with regard to cotton. There is a demand-supply mismatch which has been occurring. And to address this, the government has been playing around with the tariffs, mainly to protect the domestic cotton producers. Now, if you look at the demand for cotton, approximately on an average, India's demand for cotton is around 350 lakh bales of cotton. Approximately, we need around 330 to 350 lakh bales of cotton every year to satisfy the local domestic demand, especially the demand from the textile and garments industry. But what is alarming is that the supply has been declining over the years. See, in 2021, there was a supply of around 350 lakh bales of cotton, which would essentially take care of the requirement in the industry. There was a sort of a match between the demand and supply. So that's why in 2021, the government introduced this import duty of 11% on cotton imports, so that the cheaper cotton from foreign markets won't flood the Indian market and our cotton producers could be protected. In fact, to be more precise, in 2021, there was slight excess production of cotton. In that year, we needed around 335 lakh bales of cotton, but our production was around 350 lakh bales of cotton, meaning there was slight excess production. So that is when prices might drop and farmers will get affected. So to prevent cheaper flood of cotton imports, a duty of 11% was levied mainly to protect the domestic producers. Clear? But in 2022, things started turning around. we saw a decline in production. There was a decline in production leading to demand supply mismatch, meaning domestic production could not meet the demands of the local garment textile industry. So then the ministry had suspended these imports, just like how it has been done right now. 3 years ago as well, the import duty had been suspended for a short duration, for a temporary duration, to allow for imports in order to meet the demands of the textile industry. Since India was not producing enough cotton to satisfy the local demand, imports were allowed and the duty was suspended for a short period. Then, after the situation had stabilized, the duties had been brought back. After production had slightly gone up, domestic requirements had been met, the duty had been brought back again to block out the import of cotton into the country to protect the cotton producers. But this year, we are again facing a problem. Over the last 12 months, we have seen a decline in production, and it is quite alarming. Cotton production has fallen to around 290 lakh bales, whereas the demand remains around 335 lakh bales of cotton. A huge mismatch has come up. Because see, we also have some cotton exports as well. We export cotton as a raw material. We not only supply the cotton produced to the textile industry within our country, we export some cotton as well. So there is a big mismatch which is getting created. By the way, this is the lowest production by India in the last 15 years. Cotton production has taken a big hit. And in the last 15 years, we have produced the lowest cotton output, meaning there is a higher demand which is going to come in from the domestic market, and we are not able to meet that demand. So that's why, to facilitate the demand of the textiles garment industry, the import duty has again been suspended. The 11% import duty has again been suspended. Most likely, it will be a temporary measure. See, the government will keep on bringing such duties and suspending them to ensure that there is a balance between demand and supply, to ensure it doesn't lead to inflation, to ensure domestic producers are not affected. This policy will keep on fluctuating. The Cotton Corporation of India has been procuring cotton at MSP, and MSP prices have jumped up by 8%. So this also is a factor which plays a role. So right now, the suspension of import duty is to facilitate cheaper imports to meet the mismatch. Since production has declined and there is a higher demand from textile garment industry, right? If you don't allow for cheaper imports, our garment textile industry will take a hit. That's why the duty has been suspended, so the imports can help satisfy the demand which has sustained. So this points out to the problems that we have in cotton production and when cotton reaches the market as well. Generally, what happens, the cotton season is from October to September. By October is when cotton reaches the market from northern markets of India, from the northern states. Then by around Diwali, by around mid-October to November, that's when cotton from central and southern parts of India will hit the market. But in September month, there will be a shortage. Textile garment industry will suffer. They'll end up paying higher prices. That's why, to ease the burden on them, to ensure they can import cheaper cotton, the import duty has been suspended for now. I hope you're getting this point. So take up this small 150-word question for 10 marks, a direct question. Why has India recently suspended the import duty on cotton? Discuss. So trade policies, tariff policies will always remain relevant, especially when it has an impact on agriculture and domestic production. Now, coming to the last topic for today, a very quick point out. There's another interesting article on page 7, play-based learning for India's future. The writer here is arguing that the best way to educate our children, to train them, to nourish them, to make them develop not just physically, but emotionally and intellectually, is to promote play-based learning. See, traditionally in India's schooling system, especially when it comes to early childhood care and education, the focus has been on rote memory-based learning. Such rote memory-based learning, which we have seen historically in our country, has never been useful as it doesn't contribute to learning outcomes. Studies have clearly shown that when children are exposed to play-based learning right from infancy, especially in the age group of 0 to 6 years. This age bracket is critical for brain development, for cognitive development, and physical well being as well. So, play based learning is known to provide better outcomes. So, this has been incorporated into National Education Policy 2020 as well. The NEP 2020 says that 85% of brain development happens in this age group, which means children require the right tools, the right techniques through which they can learn, through which they are taught, not just in the schools, but by their parents as well. So, this is why the government has several initiatives in this regard. The Ministry of Women and Child Development, it leverages the reach and the power of the Anganwadi centers to achieve this objective. Anganwadi centers play a critical role in our country. They play a big role in ensuring the right nutrition and nourishment is available to young children, even pregnant women and adolescent girls. They play a role in vaccination, in ensuring the health of pregnant women, lactating mothers, and infant children and adolescent girls as well. So, apart from nutrition, nourishment, health, and vaccination, Anganwadi centers play a big role in early education. They play a very, very big role in early education. So, the government of India has an initiative for early childhood care and education, and this initiative is known as Poshan Bhi Padhai Bhi. So essentially, Anganwadi centers will not only provide for poshan, which is nutrition through better food and nutrients, they'll also provide for padai, better education, better learning. So this initiative has been the driver of our early education childhood care through Anganwadi centers. There is an initiative known as Aadhar Shila. Under Aadhar Shila, a national curriculum has been brought out for early childhood care and education for children in the age group of 3 years to 6 years. Then we also have the Nav Chetna initiative. The Nav Chetna initiative, focusing on children in this age bracket of 3 to 6 years, providing them better learning opportunities where parents are also involved. Parents are given different tools and toys and implements and strategies to play with their children so they learn through the method of playing. So it could be a certain activity, or it could be a type of quiz, or it could be a certain puzzle. So play-based games, gamification of learning is something that is being prioritized in our education system for early childhood care and education. So you find this ingrained in the principles of NEP, and the Ministry of Women Child Development through Anganwadi centers is implementing these programs. Programs such as Poshan Bhi Padhai Bhi, initiatives such as Aadhar Shila, through which a national curriculum has been brought out, and the Nav Chetna initiative, where parents are also being trained and taught, given toys and implements, so that they can play with the children and thus they can learn and develop their cognitive skills, improve their mental, emotional capabilities, along with their physical development. So this is what we take away from this important article. So with this, I bring my discussion to an end. I hope you guys have liked the session. And if you did, do press the like button, share your comments, and don't forget to subscribe to our channel. That is it. Thanks for watching.